This is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1, and today I would discuss On the Run. Now, breaking news. It would appear that Timothy Charles Holmeseth is, in fact, alive. It took exactly 1 year for Timmy to show up. He has been on the run and out of sight for a solid year, for it was 1 year to the day ago that we last heard from Mr. Holmeseth. Now, Mr. Holmeseth turned up in Delphi, Indiana. Now, this is where a couple of young ladies were murdered by a still yet not captured, I should say, person of interest. Now, Mr. Holmeseth was stupid enough to implicate me in these murders. He actually published a comparison photo. Now, if one were to post a comparison photo, I would think that this one, showing the artist drawing next to Mr. Holmeseth, would raise a few eyebrows. But then again, I am not outright accusing Mr. Holmeseth of having to do with the murder of these two young girls, unlike what he is doing with me. Now, he has done several videos about these murders and the women, and I always seem to wind up in the videos. This in spite of the fact that I am not guilty of harming, murdering, trafficking, or otherwise guilty acts against anyone, let alone children. There is simply no guilt. But Mr. Holmeseth cannot seem to understand that. Now, there's all kinds of proof to my innocence out there if Mr. Holmeseth would bother to do what he claims he is, and that is to be a investigative reporter. The only problem with that is if he were to be an investigative reporter like he claims to be, he would find out that I am not guilty of anything, I am not suspected of anything, and he should not be implicated that I am possibly suspected of anything. Using a decade-old biased news report is not going to prove guilt of any crime. The only thing I'm guilty of is having a live truck and going around and doing something nobody was doing 12 years ago. And that was live streaming mobile while on the move over the internet. The only people doing it were the networks, and they were jealous of me because I was able to do for a couple $1,000s what cost them $500,000 to do. But that's beside the point. No matter what the source of the information that Mr. Holmeseth puts out there, it does not point to any guilt on my part. I'm not guilty of anything. All Mr. Holmeseth has to do is pick up the phone and call the law enforcement agencies throughout the country, and he would find that out. And there's also another way. It's called forensics. Forensic accounting, specifically. Now, how many of you out there are truck drivers? How many of you out there work for the Department of Transportation? How many of you out there are dispatchers for transportation companies? Feel free to comment below on what I'm about to tell you. The Motor Carrier Safety Administration and the Department of Transportation requires all over-the-road truck drivers to keep a daily log 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right up to the minute of our activities when we are behind the wheel of a tractor trailer. The driver has to keep a copy of his logbook with him at all times, and it must be up to date. At the end of his trip, he has to turn in copies of the logbook to the company that he is leased to or contracted to. The latter being if you're an owner-operator. If you're, in any case, the driver has to keep a log of where he is at all times. And he is subject to being inspected by Department of Transportation personnel. Sometimes these are state troopers, sometimes these are a separate Department of Transportation. The logbooks can be inspected at weigh stations, port of entries, and various locations throughout the country. Now, it is for this reason that I have documented absolute proof that I was nowhere near Delphi, Indiana in the month, days, or weeks that these murders occurred. In fact, I have documented proof that I have not been in the state of Indiana for the last 30 years. Additional proof. Truck drivers buy fuel on the road. Sometimes the contractor pays for it, or the people that you're employed by or leased to pays for the fuel. But since diesel fuel is subject to a federal highway use tax, the driver has to keep records of where he bought the fuel, how many gallons he bought, what the mileage of the truck was at the time of the purchase of the fuel, and so forth. And so any law enforcement official wanting that information can get it. All they have to do is call up the employer, call up the company that sells the gas, do accounting of, again, the driver's logbooks, because this information has to be in the driver's log, and other records that we are required as truck drivers to keep. Now, another point. The owner of TimmyCharlesHomestead.com is a businesswoman. She's in the real estate business, or so she says. Now, in order to be able to deduct certain taxes off her tax return, you have to keep records. You have to keep records of how many miles you drive if you're using your car in the course of business, cell phone usage, all kinds of things. I have to do the same thing because I operate a business. I operate STI Auto Sales. It's a retail business. If I use a car in the course of my business, I have to keep track of the mileage, I have to keep track of the fuel, so on and so forth, so I can deduct this information off my income tax. Now, again, this all can be traced. So if Timothy Charles Homestead goes ahead and reports me to Delphi saying that I'm a person of interest in this murder case, Delphi can go right ahead and check my records. I demand them to do it. Because then I can turn around and I can file charges against Mr. Homestead for filing a false police report. Because it is a false police report. He is knowingly giving false information to law enforcement. And not only is he doing this to me, he's doing it to other people. He's running around turning all this information into law enforcement, and he knows it is not true. This is against the law. Tim Homestead is interfering with an investigation into an ongoing double murder case. He's interfering with it. He's actually shielding and diverting attention away from whoever may be the real person behind the murder of these two young ladies. And he's doing this in several cases, including the Kelly Anthony case and the Haley Cummings case. He is no investigative reporter. I don't care what award he claims to have been given to him by a regional newspaper. His so-called newspaper journalism career was short. He was fired, F-I-R-E-D. He even filed a legal claim against the newspaper. It's in the court records. But nobody in this moronic cult that he has created will check that out. They all go around believing that he is telling the truth because he happens to be a Q. And this is one of the problems today. He preaches to the choir The choir believes everything he says because he's part of the choir. They don't care if it's the truth or not. He said it, he's one of them, so it's got to be true. And he doesn't care the fact, he doesn't care that in fact he's destroying people, innocent people, with his crap. Now this moronic owner of all of Tim Homeseth's affairs keeps telling me, well, why don't you go out and get a job at Walmart? Why don't you get a job here and there? And I keep telling this idiotic, stupid woman, I have tried. But because of what Tim Homeseth and people like him have done, employers who check the internet are going to see his accusations. And they don't care if I am guilty or not guilty. They care that that material is there, and that if anybody had a problem with Walmart and decided to do a search and find out that I work for Walmart and I had this past, they could create problems for Walmart. So Walmart says, well, we're just going to prevent any problems and not hire you. And this is true of hundreds of employers. I even had a job lined up where I could have made $53,000 a year in a comfortable office. I would have been given a company car and all kinds of benefits. But the minute they checked the internet and saw what Tim Homeseth had written about me on the internet, they said, sorry, we can't afford any possibility of a controversy. And I was turned down for the job. And so there you go, folks. This is what Timothy Homeseth does. He does not care that I'm innocent or guilty. He just cares about the sensationalism he can get out of phony documents, a biased TV show, and so on and so forth. He's only interested in making money off of clickbait on his various social sites. Because all one needs to do is just click on his social media site and he's made himself $1. It's $1 a click. Because the information that is garnered from the website is sold to advertisers. So when you go on Facebook or you go on Twitter or you go somewhere else, all of a sudden you're hit with these targeted ads. And you don't understand where these ads came from. Well, they came from Timothy Charles Homeseth and websites similar to his. Because the big IT companies, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and so forth, make their money off of peddling your information to advertisers, to scammers. So when you start getting your mailbox filled up with all kinds of crap, you have people like Tim Homeseth to thank for it. People don't understand that these websites are free to visit and free to post on for a reason. They don't do this just for their health. They do it to make money, billions and billions of dollars. Your information is extracted and sent to advertisers. This is why YouTube, Facebook, Twitter require you to register before you can even read stuff in most cases. Or you have to register in order to comment. Or you have to register to do this or do that. Because they want your private information. They want your telephone number. They want your internet address. They want your email address. They want all kinds of stuff so that they can flood you with spam. So wake up, America. That's the reason for all this. And they actually pay, in some cases, people like Timothy Homeseth to set up these bogus websites so that they can make money. He gets paid a small amount of money for everybody that logs into his website to read his crap. So, any of this baloney about Tim Homeseth saying he doesn't care about money is false. You know, how else is Tim Homeseth able to afford to go from the state of Minnesota clear over to Delphi, Indiana, to stand in front of a courthouse, a sign, and elsewhere with a book to music? Video is 3 minutes long. All he is he's pointing up his book in front of his car. He's pointing at a sign. He goes over to the local courthouse, takes a picture of him in front of the courthouse with book in hand. Now, he says people called him. Well, guess what? If anybody's in contact with Timothy Homestead, that's a matter of public record. So it's an easy thing to pick up the phone and call the courthouse in Delphi, Indiana, and ask them if they had any visit from Timothy Charles Homestead and if he submitted to them any paperwork. And if he did, it's public information, and I'm going to get a copy of it. So that's what we'll be doing. We will be calling the Delphi courthouse to find out if Tim Homestead gave any information. Now, it's going to be kind of a neat trick if he did this on Memorial Day weekend, because the courthouse is closed. Number one, they're not open on the weekend. They're not open today, which is Monday, last day in May. And then we're not open on Friday. So when the hell did he go to Delphi, Indiana, and give this information? And why did he wait until Memorial Day to put this stuff up? Be interesting to see if the high command comes into my website again with that information. Because the high command seems to think that me and several other people are going to be brought over to a military tribunal for some kind of accounting. Well, I can absolutely positively guarantee on the Bible that ain't going to happen, because things don't work that way. The military is not in charge of a civilian appointment, law enforcement. That is done by the Department of Justice and state and local law enforcement agencies. The military does not get involved in civilian law enforcement, except when it involves military personnel or a crime that happens on military and federal property. You know, people need to read up on how things work before they go around getting themselves in legal difficulty by spreading this kind of bullshit. Because Craig Sawyer's fed up with it, I am fed up with it, and there's a number of other people that are fed up with it, and the accounting is coming. There are federal charges being filed, there are state charges being filed, and there are local charges being filed against these people for violations of the law. Now, it may take time, and I may have to pester the living shit out of law enforcement, but there is going to be an accounting, and somebody is going to jail, and that somebody is not me. Please like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification button, because I'm going to be doing more investigating into the actions of Timothy Charles Homestead, his handler, and the other members of this crime syndicate known as the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force and the High Command. Until then, this is William K. Murtaugh, Witness 1. Have a good one.